on video.
No, you
Um,
good.
okay, thank you so much. So let me pull the social studies 4 through 8. Where's it at? Okay. So, and I'm actually going to put more in the social studies booklet or folder, I should say, because these STAR exams are a really good
Mhm.
assessment, if you will, of your knowledge of the teaks, right?
Yes,
Do you
yes, of
know
course.
the vocabulary? Do you know
Vocabulary.
the people? Yeah, what skills do they have to do when they're assessing graphics, right? Or
Yes.
when they're looking at maps. So
Mhm.
when they're utilizing graphic organizers, which is one of your standards, right? You being able to
Yes, ma'am.
utilize graphic organizers in your
Organizers. Yes, ma'am.
instruction, right?
Yes. Yes,
And one
ma'am.
of the reasons is because they have to be able to organize information. We
Yes,
want
ma'am.
them to do that. So a lot of times I like for my students to, when they're breaking down their TEKS, when they're breaking down their standards, to utilize graphic organizers also helps sort of reinforce, and it is a learning tool for us. It helps our brain sort of organize things for us. And I think that it would be beneficial for you to, and I'm going to put all of them in there. And
Okay.
there's only 8th grade because social studies isn't, it used to be tested in the 5th grade, like a long time ago. And I've been a teacher since 2003, 2004 was my first
Okay.
year of record. And a lot has changed. There used to
Yes.
be a lot more tests, or actually they've taken some tests away, but still it feels like there's too much testing
Mhm.
that's going on. And in any event, I like to suggest to my students to use these as a 2-pronged study tool, right? So the first time
Yes.
when you engage with these, take it like you're taking it a test, right? Like
Yes, ma'am.
you're the student in the 8th grade taking this exam, and then grade it. But then afterwards, and you'll see, and I'm going to put some of the better ones in here because I don't think oh yeah, I did. After you've taken them, when you go to see which ones you got wrong, this is a really useful activity for you to see the rationale behind it. And they only just barely started providing this within the past 3 years. They didn't used to just give you the letter that was correct, and that's it. No explanation why to anything else might not be correct, but it's useful for you to look at. And then I think an added step would be for you to see, like, where in the TEKS was this, that they were, what was being measured here, like which TEK was being measured in this thing. And that's going like a 3rd step. But
Yes, ma'am.
just you going through and taking the test and then writing the rationale out, or at the very least reading and soaking in that rationale and utilizing it as a study tool, because they're going to ask you about the things they think are most important for the students to learn.
Exactly.
And this exam, it's created by Pearson. Pearson makes the state exams also.
Yes, ma'am.
So same test maker, same TEKS, you know what I mean? They're going to be covering a lot of that. So there's going to be a lot of the same repetitive content area. And so I think there's like 8 years of 8th grade, and I'm going to put that in there, but that doesn't mean that that's enough. You just, with doing these, you still have to go in and really sort of understand what they're supposed to be doing and what they're supposed to be learning, like in the 4th grade, which is, if you've watched my videos, you'll know that in the 4th grade, that's like Texas history light,
Texas history,
right?
Yeah.
Right. Texas history light. 7th grade is Texas history dark. It's like an added leg to it. You learn more, you go deeper into sort of maybe some of the controversies, into a little bit more complex ideas dealing with market and economics, so understanding that way, when you take the exam, you won't be tricked during those instructional questions, because that's when it's going to matter. That's when they're going to say, like, Mr. Davis is a 5th grade social studies teacher, and he's currently working on a geography unit. You have to know, what are they doing in 5th grade? fifth grade is US history light,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so they might give you really good stuff on Texas history, really good stuff about world history, and they might be really great activities like, wow, this is good. Maybe a fifth grader would do that. Not if you know in the fifth grade, they are not even learning that. That's not their
Exactly.
focus. Their
Exactly.
focus is the United States. So it might be something like the different areas, or like migration patterns from east to west, right?
ma'am.
The expansion, those would be some of the things that would be more appropriate. And so for
Yes,
those
ma'am.
instructional ones, paying attention to the details is really important, because they'll tell you instructional details about the grade level that should tell you about like what should they be doing, what level of difficulty should they be doing it at,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Because there are amazing activities that we have for eighth graders that we wouldn't necessarily use with fourth graders. They're not really going to work. They're not that mature yet,
Yes, ma'am.
all of them. And so we do different things with different age and grade levels for different purposes, and then add in an added complexity of like, maybe it's a special population, maybe it's a special ed student. We have particular strategies that we have to and must implement and utilize in order to support our students to be successful in their social studies instruction. Maybe they're an English language learner,
Yes,
an
ma'am.
ELL student.
Yes.
In that case, we also have supports, strategies, and particular goals in mind that coexist with our social studies instruction in order to get them to be proficient. Because especially with our ELL students, I mean, it's really for all of them, but like, they've increased it a little bit more in the rest of the grades, or not grades, but like kind of content areas, but especially history and English, there's a lot of reading that they have
It
to do.
is. Yes, of
A
course.
lot of reading, a lot of articles, and a lot of times kids don't like to read. And the truth of the matter is that most of them that we've had did not get taught to read via science of teaching reading. And like the whole controversy is that we've been doing it wrong this whole time.
Yes,
So we
ma'am.
have a lot of people who don't feel comfortable with reading and their reading skills,
Yes, ma'am.
especially with things that are not interesting to them, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So even reading things that are interesting is not on the on the menu for some of them in their free time. Now we're asking them to read about something that is like they're having to learn in school. We need to give them the reading tools in order to be able to, and there's a lot of overlap with social studies and ELAR as far as the strategies that you guys can use
Yes,
to
ma'am.
help your students be self-aware of the things that they're reading, be able to understand it, like do the same checking for understanding techniques that we do in our reading passages in yours. So for instance, and I'm going to pick up, I hate it when it does that. It always just like gets out of the whole shebang, but you have access to this, right? This folder?
Yes. I'm not taking 4 through 8 again. I'm doing 7 through 12.
That's right. I'm sorry.
You're all right.
Again, that. So, but in any event, the 7 through 12, I'm still going to put those in there. Wait, I'll put it back, because those math, not math, those assessments.
Yes, ma'am.
Social studies. I'm going to put those assessments here for you.
Yes.
And so you can look through those, and I want for you to sort of like take a look at, and we'll go back to one and take a look at some of the questions that they ask them and the ways in which they ask the questions. Because you'll see that it is a little bit reminiscent of what you experience on the TEKS, not so much on the instructional side of it. So here you have your standards document, and the section that you're talking about, the domain that you have particular need in, that you've identified yourself, is the instruction, right? And so that is going to be concerning standards 3. And possibly more, but let's bring up the breakdown really quickly so we can see them side by side. So you will have more exams. Actually, I said there was only 8th grade. I think there's like some other history exams. I'm going to put those in there for you too, as far as like student assessments
Okay.
and the corresponding rationale. 7 through 12. It's like I never, oh, here it is. I never remember like it's like the NES, whatever. I always forget that. So the overview, and this is what I wanted to look at. So we have our standards here, and I always explain this to all of my students. So I've seen this exam be made when a new content area is made. I was part of the professionals that were taught first by TEA about the STR. So we got to see it through the different phases. And before it was even an exam, they were only the standards, and then the different objectives that the state has in mind, and that is what they make the exam base the exam from. And now they might rearrange them and sort of like regroup them in a different way, but it's the same information, and they break it down in this graphic here for us so that you can see that as far as that standards document. And the reason I always want the students to start with this document, it looks like it's kind of like, oh, scary. It's all like small print and whatnot, but it does go into sometimes deeper detail in not just what you need to know as a social studies teacher, but also what you need to be able to do. And so on this side, this is what your knowledge standards are. Anything on the left-hand column, anything on the right-hand column is your application, you applying that knowledge into the social studies classroom.
Yes, ma'am.
And so more often than not, especially for the PPR, it's true for the PPR at every single time, but the correct answer is going to come from the right hand side. It's going to be the teacher selecting and using developmentally appropriate instructional practices. See, that's what we are talking about. Standard 3 is the one that you need to do a very deep dive in, and that means that you not only read this document, but understand what it means. And so like you might have to print this out, and when you write appropriate instructional practices, you'd be direct instruction, cooperative learning, maybe research, different ways and strategies, activities, technologies that you could utilize to promote their knowledge. So as you go through this, and as you watch your not your videos, but I'm going to send them to you, but the PPR videos, I want for you to like write down when you hear an instructional practice. Like a really important instructional practice is and it's like very easy, and the reason I say it's important and it's just my opinion as a scholar and as an educator is because it functions in so many ways. It allows us to assess, and it gives the student like a relaxed way to practice with language, with content, with peers, and then come back to a larger sort of assessment scenario. And what I'm talking about is when you have poignant questions, maybe you had an activity, you watched a video, the students read poems from the time period, that you're discussing, or looked at artifacts in groups. And now you want to assess. You had an objective, whatever the objective was. If you want for them to be able to like understand the tone and the attitude of the poem and sort of like connect it to the political or the like historical tone of the time, if that's your objective, you have to ask some sort of a question to measure or to see, where they are on that, as far as mastery. And we have a lot of questions that we want to see if the kids understood, do you understand what the difference between a democracy and a monarchy is? They're just as simple as that. And you have them write it down. And for somebody who's like maybe in 9th grader and they're an ELL student and they're in your class, for them to, and let's say if you asked them that and you just wanted them to repeat it out loud or just answer back, your ELL students, your beginner and your intermediates, they might not feel comfortable at all responding. Your beginners won't ever. Your intermediates, maybe, if they have time to write it down, think about it, write it down. I'm going to write it down exactly. And then add another step, a think, pair, share. Now turn to your partner and discuss with your partner. And then in a think, pair, share is such an amazing, it's an ELL strategy. It's like a special ed strategy. And it's just it should be an everybody strategy, because it gives the students a low risk, low anxiety way to engage with the content, with the saying the language, saying the words. They already wrote about it and thought about it themselves. Now they're turning to someone and they're speaking it, which is practicing oral language proficiency. And we want them to be saying the word democracy and monarchy and oligarchy and talking about it in these intelligible ways. They practice in this low risk scenario with their pair. And then you say, this is another added benefit. Let's say that I'm wrong. Well, oligarchy is when your system is ruled by like trolls or like the mafia, and my partner could be like, well, I mean, that's one way to describe what an oligarch, but this is actually, this, and then so that negotiation of meaning and understanding, typically when you've paired somebody, you should have paired them thoughtfully. If it's an ELL student, they should have been paired with someone who also speaks their language and is a native English speaker. So that person would be able to help them practice, negotiate meaning, maybe correct, self-correct, give another whatever. And now we come back and I ask everybody, whole group, if anyone wants to share, or if I call on someone, they are going to be less anxious, more prepared, and have a more thoughtful response for you. And you'll have a better assessment. Plus, everyone will turn the stuff in and you'll get to look at it later. But that activity, it's just so important. And people were always talking in my classroom, but it was because I wanted for them to be practiced utilizing the language, to talk about the ideas. It wasn't just like talking for talking's sake. So going through each one of these and making sure that you understand what all that means, what it means on the knowledge side and what it means
on skill side.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're talking about this one here. Was it domain 7?
Yes, ma'am.
So it actually is 1 through 3. Standards 1 through 3. So it's not just 3. So it's social studies, foundations, skills, research, and instruction. So how was your US history? Because US history, Texas history is a huge portion.
Well, on my 4 through 8, I did good on the US history and the Texas history. I think on the last time I took it, I was close. I was knocking on the door. I think I made a 227.
Yeah, you were close.
I was right there. I think Texas history I got, because Texas history, that's easy. That's nothing talking about like the animal annexation in Mexico. That's easy to me, and I'm from Texas, so that's always been a no-brainer for me. I would probably got like 10 out of 12. And U.S. history, that comes normally to me like American Revolution, stuff like that. I want to say maybe 9 out of 10 or 10. I probably missed like 2 or 1. But I was struggling with economics at first. And then when the last time I took it, I believe I got 8 out of 12 or 8 out of 11. But it's just the skills part that I'm horrible at. And that's what I'm chiming on and studying on. But I think this time when I take it, the 7 through 12 social studies, because it's gonna be my first time taking it, because I want to be a football coach, because I played football. I had a football scholarship. So I couldn't, with 4 through 8 social studies, you can't be no football coach. You're going to be a middle school football coach. And I want to do high school. So that's why my former coach told me, well, you need to do 7 through 12. So that's why I've been studying for the 7 through 12 this go around, And basically, it's basically just the same thing, like with the 4 through 8 and the 7 through 12. It's really the same thing. So that's why I'm harping over the skills part, because that's my weakness. And when I had the tutor, with Teacher Builder, he was telling me, he was like, man, you know the content. He was like, it's just the skills part. So
Right.
I think I got it down this time. So that's why I'm on this meeting with you, because Miss Garza was like, she not gonna be able to open up my test until I meet with you. So after the
Right.
meeting, she's supposed to open it up, and then I'm
Okay.
gonna take it at the end of December when the kids go off for break, or probably the beginning of January. So I feel like I got it this time because I've been harping, I've been studying. So
Right. Right.
yes,
Absolutely. And so if you just, continue with that and really
ma'am.
focus in on those areas of need. And so here you have your competencies,
Yeah.
and we'll go down to the bottom of it. And again, your competencies are just your standards and the
Yes.
TEKS reconfigured together
Uh-huh.
in for the exam. So and I'll tell her to open it today, but I don't remember if I sent you the video
I think
links for
the
7 through 12, because
no,
there's
you,
a lot of
because you did because you told me before you told me before we meet, I need to watch the 7 through 12 videos
oh,
on
okay.
YouTube. Yeah, I watched all that, the Mayan, the Mayans,
Oh, okay,
Native
cool.
Americans, yeah.
Yeah, because that tends, to be
Because you talk,
uh,
because you said to make sure that I'm watching it, make sure that I comment, and I comment on all of them. I know it was a
okay,
lot, so I did it over the weekend. Yes, ma'am. And I know I
excellent.
got the standards right here. I'm telling you, I've been on it.
Okay,
I'm telling you.
awesome. I'm
I've
so
been,
glad. I'm really, really glad.
yes,
So why
ma'am.
does it keep on going to this? I'm trying to go back to where we were, and this is okay here. So it begins with 1.
Yeah.
Standard 1, standard
Mhm.
2, and
Mhm.
standard 3.
Yeah.
So standard 1, the social studies teacher has a comprehensive knowledge of social
Mhm.
studies and recognizes the value of social studies. That's the overarching goal. So when you're reading those questions, think like, well, what are they trying to do
Yes, ma'am.
here? Like what is the goal here for the teacher in the scenario?
Yes, ma'am.
Use social science information and
Okay.
ideas to study
Mhm.
social phenomena.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's going to be a teacher
Yeah.
doing one of the things on
Yes.
the
Yes.
right hand column.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
in order to do those things, you have to know the stuff that's on the other that's going on the other side.
Yes,
There's
ma'am.
lots of like social science research that's going on, that
Mhm.
historians even today are talking about, the rise of the MAGA culture and how that sort of changed the workplace, changed family,
Yes, ma'am.
and so like that's something that social scientists are looking at it. It's history in the making, lots of things that we look at and focus on. And so, understanding what is based on your audience of
Yes,
students, the
ma'am.
level, the grade, what is appropriate for them to be learning and doing at that time. So going through the TEKS for 7 through 12, right? The
Yes, ma'am.
7th grade, which is social studies, and I'm not social studies, Texas history, and
History.
then it's US history, right?
History. Yes, yes.
8th grade, and then 9th grade is like geography, maybe.
Mhm.
I'm not sure how that breaks down. Let's see, but there's actually kind of a lot of TEKS. Let me make sure that we are familiar with all of the ones that you're responsible for.
Hey, Miss Sauceda, I gotta go pick up my kids from the
Not at all.
cafeteria.
No, not at all. You go on, and I'm going to put those assessments in there, the ones that are available for you to like review on some
Yes,
of
ma'am.
the
Of course. Thank you.
historical stuff. And then I'm also going to email you the PPR videos so that
Yes,
you can
yes,
watch those and get more instructional stuff.
yes, ma'am. So are you gonna inform Miss Garza to open up my test? Because I was gonna pay for it today.
Yes, I'm going to
Okay.
ask her to open it up for you today,
Okay.
right
Yes,
now.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I appreciate it. Okay.
Absolutely. You have a
Thank you.
beautiful rest of your
All right.
day.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you. You have a blessed day.
Yes, absolutely. You
Yes,
too.
ma'am. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.